Hello friends, and welcome to this short video in which we are today going to try and understand the very basic fundamentals about the institution of the judiciary in India. Now the first thing that we need to understand, we've always studied and learned that the government comprises of three basic organs: the legislature that makes the law, the executive that executes the law, and the judiciary that interprets the law. Now when we talk about this interpretive function of the judiciary, what we need to understand is that interpretation of the law is not the primary function of the judiciary, which it does on a basic day-to-day basis. What I mean by this is that the judges sitting in the court of law do not sit with the mindset that, come on, let's interpret a law today which the legislature has made yesterday. The primary basic function of the judiciary, mind you, is to adjudicate disputes that are brought before it. Now, for purposes of this adjudication, to whatever extent the judiciary would need to interpret the law, that is the kind of interpretation that the judiciary indulges into. So when the judiciary is, resolving a conflict or a dispute before it, it needs to resolve this dispute in accordance with the law. Now, while it applies the law to the facts of that particular case, it will often require to go into the meaning of certain words used in that statute or in that law. Now, for purposes of adjudicating this dispute, the court would often have to interpret the law, and that is the kind of interpretive function that the judiciary indulges into. So we need to understand in the first place that the judiciary does not sit in a vacuum to interpret the law. This is number one. Number two, we have to understand the structuring of the judicial institution in India. Now, in the Indian federal state, the judiciary, mind you, is not divided on the federal principle, in the sense that you see the legislature and the executive divided on the principle of federalism. But when it comes to the judiciary, you do not say that the Supreme Court of India, is a court only of the center. The judiciary arranges itself in a hierarchical pattern. So you have an undivided judiciary that arranges itself hierarchically, in the sense that you have the lowest court first, then you have a court above it, then you have a court still above it. That's how you go on traveling upward in appeal till you reach the Supreme Court of India, which, mind you, is our stopping point within our federation. So the judiciary in India does not divide itself on the federal principle. This is number two. Number three, which we need to know about the judiciary, is that the judiciary also possesses a law generating capacity. We've said this before, that legislature is that branch of the government that makes the law. But like the legislature makes the law, the judiciary also has a law generative capacity, and this law generating capacity comes to the judiciary through what we call as the doctrine of precedent. So, whatever judgment is given by the Supreme Court of India, that judgment assumes the quality of binding law. Whatever meaning of the words in the statute would be expounded by the court in the course of its judgment, that is the meaning that would bind subsequent cases of a similar kind that come up before the court in the future. So in this sense, the judiciary also possesses a law generating capacity. But what we need to know is that the judiciary does not lay down prescriptive law like the legislature does. So the kind of law that the judiciary lays down is by and large declaratory. So it declares what the words in the statute mean. And once that meaning is accorded by the judiciary to those words, that is what we carry forward in future subsequent cases. Cases of a similar kind are treated similarly in all subsequent times before the court. So this is the third important feature about the judiciary we need to know. The fourth and the final feature that I'm going to talk to you about today in this video is about the principle of independence of the judiciary. This is a robust principle that runs through the fabric of our constitution. Now, when we say that the function which the judiciary discharges is the function of adjudication of disputes. Now, by the very nature of the kind of function that the judiciary discharges, one thing you require about the judiciary is impartiality and neutrality in the decision-making process. Now, in order to ensure that the judiciary is able to remain impartial and neutral, you need the judiciary to be also independent. Independent of influences from the executive or the legislature. Because we cannot forget the fact that, in a large number of cases, one of the litigating parties before the court is often the state itself. Now, when the state is one of the parties to the dispute, if the executive or the legislature has influence on the judiciary would never be able to give impartial judgments. And that's the reason why you require the judiciary to be independent of these influences from outside. It's necessary in order to maintain the impartiality and neutrality of the judicial decision-making process. So if we are to take a quick recap, friends, we spoke today about 4 features relating to the judiciary. Number 1, the interpretive function and the manner in which the judiciary discharges it. Number 2, the hierarchical structuring of the judiciary in India, which is not divided, mind you, on the principle of federalism. Number 3, the law generating capacity of the judiciary. And number 4, finally, we spoke about the independence of the judiciary. That's all in this video, but we'll have more videos coming up discussing other features of the judicial institution. So stay tuned and goodbye. Thank you.